I mean, from what I hear, again, I think it's like the power dynamics going on there. MTN is a very powerful telco. I mean, controls over 60% of all, of all subscribers, controls over, maybe 60% as well of all recharges, and of course, of all recharges and of all data traffic and all of those kind of things, right? So it's a very powerful telco. So it's probably used to being a price giver rather than a price taker, right? But of course, there's a big challenge in Nigeria's banking sector, right? For the CBN doesn't allow telco to lead financial transactions, right? So mobile money is bank-led. Our, all these kind of financial transactions are led by banks, not by telcos. Right? So that's why telcos alone cannot, if the CBN allows telco to act as banks, meaning control money flows, MTN will be a big bank, right? So, but the CBN has caught that because they don't want to make the M-Pesa mistake, like they say. Anyway, so the point here is that I mean, from what we've seen, it's like the banks and MTN are having challenges around, okay, what spread to earn on every transaction that happens, by an MTN subscriber. So for example, if you recharge 100 naira on your phone, the banks should earn a certain percent. I think it's a margin of like 4% or something around the recharge amount. So it means that the bank is a reseller of an MTN recharge card. So similar to the way we normally do recharge card back in days. We buy 100 naira, we get 100 naira value, right? But the person that is selling to us makes a cut because he didn't buy the recharge card 100 naira. So it's similar things happen there. But I think the MTN wants us to reduce the margin from 4% to smaller margin, 2.something%, and the banks are not having it. And then when you're up against the banks, not just one bank, but all of the commercial banks, I think you're probably not strong enough to take them on. Looking at data traffic right now, I'm not sure how many people still buy recharge cards. I think recharge card transactions have moved to USSD transaction. I've not bought recharge card I don't know, since I learned about the star, something, USSD code from my bank, right? So I've not been on the street vendor to buy recharge cards, right? So I think that if that's true for me, it's probably true for a lot of people, at least in Lagos, right? So I'll make a postulation that, okay, maybe physical recharge card, transactions have gone down by maybe 60%, right, across all networks, because of the USSD transactions that the banks are allowing you to do, or to recharge from your mobile app, or to recharge, But USSD works because even if you don't have credit, if you don't have data, you can recharge, right? So I think that's where the problem is. So you're taking on about 20 banks to say that, yes, you want to reduce their margin, and the banks, no, we have a deal with you. You're not going to do that. When MTN was doing this thing through physical vendors, yes, they can deal with their vendors the way they want, but the banks are saying, no, you can't have this. Right? And I think that's where the problem is. So the question is that who's going to balk first? The banks will lose transactions because MTN is a major customer to the banks, because MTN subscribers are a lot more, right? But also, MTN will lose the major distribution partner in the banks, because if 50% of transactions are now done via USSD, and the banks have, and the banks control maybe 40% of that, and then fintech control the remaining, because they're not necessarily commercial banks, and they probably don't have the bargaining power that commercial banks have. So would you forego 40% of the 50% digital transactions just because of, of another 150 kobo gain? I don't think so. So the question is that who is losing the most here? Is it the banks or MTN? So I think it's a great fight. And it's strange that this fight is happening, just before a public holiday, right? And I think that's what's left to see. Subscribers will shout, but hey, let's see who balks first, basically.
Fisayo, thank you so much for that explanation.
Thank you, Fisayo.
Very illustrative, very in depth. But the USSD channels, on the infrastructure, isn't that run by the telcos, the USSD infrastructure?
Yes,
telcos. So
USSD infrastructure run by telcos.
It's run by the telcos, right?
Yes.
Great,
yes.
Great. So if we push this going forward, doesn't the advantage? I mean, I like how you put it. It's almost 50-50 with both of them who could lose more. But if it's the CBN that is helping the banks stay ahead of the telcos, right? Because if we project what's happening in South Africa and other Kenya and other countries, the telcos are ahead. You know?
Yes, I mean, I think it's only in Kenya that telcos are, or East Africa basically, that the telcos are leaders of that. That's why, I mean, if you spoke to regulators, they call it the M-Pesa mistake, because the regulators in Kenya felt that they are doing financial inclusion by allowing telcos, become, to be major, cash flows, which is why M-Pesa is the biggest name It's a Safaricom product actually. So it's not just a mobile money. M-Pesa is a product of Safaricom, which is the biggest telco in Kenya. So imagine what M-Pesa could potentially be if they're allowed to do that themselves.
Fisayo, sorry, because you mentioned M-Pesa, someone asked the question for you to Zeal said if you could kindly explain what the M-Pesa mistake was exactly. It's interesting you brought that up because the question came even before you started, using that as an example. So it'd be really great if you could break it down for our listeners.
Yes. So right now in Kenya, right, most about all digital transactions, if you're using Uber, Uber app, almost every digital transaction in Kenya is done via mobile money. In fact, mobile money is a more popular, payment, gateway compared to, let's say, card transaction. If you went to a store, Prince Eberno or something, you are more likely to pay with a mobile money account than with your card when you get to Kenya, right? So if you think about Nigeria, card is more prevalent, right, for digital transactions. But in Kenya, for every payment gateway, they would integrate mobile money first before integrating card, right? The cards are led by the banks. Mobile money is led by a telco, right? So basically, what the M-Pesa mistake is that people didn't think about the regulators then didn't think about what the effect of that would be to the banks, because banks are the ones that should typically control money flows. But now people get their salaries in their bank and move the money to their M-Pesa accounts. So technically, meaning taking deposits away from the banks, because the money sits with Safaricom, right? Not with the bank, sits with Safaricom, and then they now do transaction from the Safaricom SIM. And then somehow Safaricom has the widest coverage in Kenya, where there's practically no downtime. So it means that you can be taking bus. So it's saying you are moving from Ikorodu to VI, and you can pay with your M-Pesa. Not cash, not card, mobile money. Because almost everybody has this. So it's like, if you speak to any Kenyan, they have a Safaricom account and another telco. That's how it's distributed. You have a Safaricom first, and then another telco later. Of course, there's still Tigo Money, Airtel Money, all of those kind of mobile money services. But M-Pesa, which is by Safaricom, is far ahead. And there's no way the banks are not catching up, because they can't, they are not the ones that control the mobile money flow. Of course, they too are trying to compete by saying that they will do a mobile app that is USSD based and But people are used to just start something, and everybody. I mean, I remember there was a time I was almost stranded in Kenya because the person I was meant to pay didn't have a POS, right? And there's no way I will pay, except of course I have to talk to someone behind me, like, okay, bros, I would send money to you, help you pay with your M-Pesa. It's okay, no problem. How much is it? Small money, so you just paid for me. So we didn't have a way to send money to him, right? Except of course I changed my dollars to cash and then give him cash, right? So a lot of people reject cash because they feel that, there was a time I was buying, so we're in the middle of the road express, so we went to some due diligence thing. So it's like you're on middle of nowhere between Benue and Kogi or something like that. And they wanted to buy some, things by the roadside. You want to buy local stuff, and nobody's willing to collect cash from us, just M-Pesa account. So I think that's the description. So it's the biggest thing. So, but in Nigeria, you're not allowed to. MTN is not allowed to be a bank, right? So that's why, to a large extent, the banks are the ones still controlling the way mobile money is operated, and that's why some people think that that's why it's not as prevalent in Nigeria compared to the way it's prevalent in probably other markets.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for that breakdown, Fisayo.
Solid. And look, I'm sorry, but I think the competition should be opened for both parties. The
Of course.
They've done the work. They have the most subscribers.
Yeah.
Inclusion, I believe, should be telco-led. And you either adapt or you die. I don't know how much longer the central bank can continue to support banks here and keep them ahead. This payment service, what's the latest with the payment service bank licenses? That one still hasn't been completely proliferated to the mobile players.
Yes, so PSBs, I think, is a way. So PSB is an Indian version of mobile. So because you can't allow telcos to lead mobile money, you created another service for them, payment service bank, essentially making them quasi bank because they're not necessarily banks because they can't do lending. I mean, M-Pesa does lending in Kenya. They have some product called M-Shwari, right? So for their merchants, because they see all the money flows, all the merchants collect their money from mobile money. So M-Pesa is probably one of the biggest lenders in Kenya, not even the bank.
I doubt if that would ever be allowed in Nigeria, for at least in the nearest future.
You get so that is where this thing is going to go to. If you allow telcos to control money flows, it means that they can build other products on top of that money flow control that they have, which is what the CBN is not having. But of course, until you stop having an ex-banker as a CBN governor, I mean, since Charles Soludo, up until as it was Charles Soludo that is the non-banker that had been CBN governor before in recent history. Since then, it's been one ex-banker to another ex-banker, and they always have the back of their banking colleagues. So that's what it's going to be. But again, just to clarify, because I remember there was a time the Minister of Communications intervened in this problem that banks and telcos are having regarding the cost of the USSD infrastructure, meaning that the banks are meant to pay a certain amount for the benefit of using that infrastructure. I think they agreed that the bank to pay a certain amount. So
that was 2 weeks ago.
That was 2 weeks ago, yes.
Yeah.
So for the use of the infrastructure, the banks are paying, right? But now the problem they're having is that on the margins on the product being sold. So MTN wants to reduce the margins that the banks earn. Like, no, well, we are paying to use your infrastructure. We're not going to work on this issue. And I think that, I mean, someone will have to listen to the voice of reason and say, okay, the guy, sorry, come and take, or okay, we are not even, there's something that's going to happen eventually, but hey, the subscribers will have to suffer in the meantime until that happens.
All right, thank you, Fisayo. It's like you are reading the minds of our listeners. Just before you mentioned Emefiele being a banker, Benga Kamu had said the banks have one of their own at the CBN, so we can cry all we want. The banks hold the aces. And then final comment before we go this morning, Goke from the UK says CBN will continue to back the banks against telcos as long as the CBN is a product of the banks. Thank you all so much for your conversation. Really detailed, very well informed. I'd actually ask people to watch again in case they missed it. Great conversation. Thank you, Fisayo. Thank you, Rotus. And we're back again on Monday. Happy Easter to you both. And to all our listeners, we'll be back again on Monday for another edition of Business Express 91. Rotus, you promised to start to infuse tech news in your Business Express stories.
Every day, one tech story.
We're looking forward to that. So not just on Tech Fridays. Okay, so at 7:30 we bring you freshly pressed 981 detailed analysis of today's national news headline stories. You can find Rotus at Rotan Quote and Fisayo at Aremo Fisayo on Twitter. Also find us at Smooth 981 FM. Use the hashtag Business Express 981. Join us in a few minutes or in about 43 minutes for Freshly Pressed 981 at 7:30. Our analysts will be joining us then. Please also join the conversation. We're looking forward to a very robust conversation. In the meantime, enjoy some smooth music here on your smoothest dial on radio, Smooth 98.1. Stay tuned. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Have a beautiful day and stay with Smooth. We're back at 7:30 for another live transmission.